Greetings, everyone.
Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool.
I know.
It feels so right.
It's Jake Ciely.
Opening our minds to new ideas. Kill him!
Who is that guy?
Your mama.
You just made the list!
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in fantasy. Ladies of the range.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
Game on, you ducks. It is All in Fantasy, and it is week 5 of the Waiver Wire show already. That's right. We're already into the 5th week. Now we can say we're about a quarter of the way done, right? Meaning because it's like 4.5. So now this is what the quarter's actually here. Who the hell knows anymore? Because 17 weeks of craziness. But unfortunately, we have buys, and unfortunately, we have some major injuries. So I like to stay positive when I can, and people are probably like, "No, you don't. No, you're never positive."
Yeah, that made me laugh too.
See, like I was being serious. I try to.
I know.
I just like to push back when I get pushes. So anyway, I think we need to start on the bad side though, because there's a lot of worries, there's a lot of injuries, there's a lot of just people want help. Like, now's not the time to give up, even if you're 0-4. Look, I've seen 0-4 teams make playoffs. 0-5. Occasionally still it happens. Just you got to get in there. You got to get that 6th seed, 4th seed, depending, and you never know. Like, how many times have people been in there and been like the number 1 seed faces the number 6 seed, or number 3 faces 6, or whatever, and the 6 runs all the way to the championship. You hit the right. My homie last year, the 6th place team, like, he changed his team name to "How Did I Get Here" when he was in the championship game, because it's that's all
gonna
you
get
need
to
is
the
you need
dance.
those runs. See, completely different. So let's talk worries, because let's go straight to the Jets, because there's 2 players in the worry report this week, one being Breece Hall, the other being Garrett Wilson. But let's talk Breece Hall first, because it was miserable if you had Breece Hall. Actually, at one point, the dude had 0 yards despite having a 7-yard reception, because he also had negative 7 yards rushing. Kind of got out to a miserable start, we'll put it that way, and saved his day-ish at the end, if you want to call 6-7 points, depending on your league, saving his day. But the big concern we got from watching that game is Braylon Allen continues to be a thing, and he continues to be a thing, most importantly, Chris, between the tackles and in those tough yards and after the contact. Hall is getting stuffed at a higher rate with a lower missed tackle percentage than Braylon Allen, so that's concerning, because right now, Breece Hall is still getting the goal line carries. He's still getting the goal-to-go touches. If this switches, and all of a sudden it's Breece Hall, still getting the passing game. That's clear. That's still his. But we might fall into the old Matt Forte world, where it's like, hey, that's great, and then all of a sudden you never get any touchdowns. Or James Cook, which, hey, he's got some this year. He's been better this year. Almost to the bet, meaning he's at 3.
Yeah,
just
close.
needs the one more.
Still going to sweat that out for weeks, guaranteed.
Still right there. But unlike James Cook, like, the bigger issue here is Braylon Allen's seemingly starting to take a lot more. Like, James Cook is like, fine. It's like, okay, you know what? Even if he only has 4 touchdowns at the end of the year, still getting 70% of the work, and he's going to have 1,400 yards. Breece Hall, if he starts to lose 40% of the work, might have 1,000 yards. And then what if it's 3 or 4? So I'm setting all this up to say, what are your duck levels? Because I only gave him 2, but I could see it being higher depending on how worried you are.
I'd say two is fair, but you would never imagine giving him 2 heading into the season. When I was debating between him and Bijan, I was thinking, okay, Bijan Robinson may have Tyler Algier. Like, he may, like, the coach speak stuff, and it's Algier's getting some touches. But even as much as I liked Allen, I didn't think that he would be this involved. I thought it would just be like a handful of touches here and there, and Breece Hall would get, you're right. Luckily, he is getting those targets and those catches. He's got 18 catches. Like, if he didn't have 18, like 16 for 54, 14 for 62, 16 for 54, 10 for 4, it's not really what you signed up for. You're nice to get those carries, but he's yet to, really pop off on the ground. And that's kind of concerning. And that's why you're hearing Robert Saleh, talk about Allen a little bit more and say the goal line is paraphrasing, really not a lock, saying that he's going to have to, keep the options open. And that's really not what you want to hear when you have a star running back like Breece Hall. So I would give him a couple ducks. I think everything you said, he's still going to be the lead. I would say he still gets like 60 to 70, 75% of the touches on the ground. And he's just such a good player through the air that I just don't think that will go away and it'll be fine. But, I've had a hard time. Last week I had a hard time ranking him because I was thinking, what if it was like the week before and the Jets actually had success, which they didn't, and that maybe they'd lean on Allen a little bit more. And I was like, well, if they get up in the game, it's probably because Breece did something. But they really didn't move the ball all that well. And they made that switch. So even this week, I did some rankings last night. I, like Derrick Henry over him, like easily. Not just the rest of the year. He's not, and even he's splitting with somebody, but he's getting, we know, at least the goal line work for sure.
Oh, yeah, and he's having no problem running the ball between the tackles because he's Derrick freaking Henry. So let me throw out a potential Spider-Man gif pointing at each other here. Tell me if I'm crazy. Breece Hall pointing at Rachaad White.
Oh, man, I was going to bring it up. I didn't know if I was crazy. I was
Before this game, hold on. Even if you throw out this game, 10 rushes for 4 yards, even if we throw this one out, just say that didn't happen. His yards per carry before this game for the first 3 weeks was 3.7.
Right. And do you remember how he started last year? I know last year we can say, okay, there was no quarterback play and he was coming off the injury, but that is how he started last season with a lot of those dud games. Like, look at these ones in between in the middle from around November before he kind of popped off, like 3.3, 1.4, 3.1, 2.2, 2.3, 3.6, 1.2. Like that's brutal. And then the way that he finished the season, again, a lot of his yardage came through the air. So I don't know, like maybe he's just not finding those holes. I was thinking the same thing when we were just talking this out. It's like, okay, he's going to keep this pass catching role. I don't think he's going to be limited on the ground as much as Rachaad White, where it turns into like, hey, you get 10 carries, Bucky, you get 10 carries. And well, if it does, we need to consider giving him another duck, because if he's not going to have 65 to 70% of the rushing work, maybe it needs to be 2.5.
I mean, if he's Rachaad White, he's an RB2. He's not, not even being a top 5 running back. He's an RB2. If this yeah. And I'm scared of Salah and that he said that. I'm legit. Like, maybe we should. I got to go up the back and give him 3. I mean, the way we're talking about it, honestly, it should probably be like more 3 with an egg and like potentially birthing a 4th. Because let's put it this way: let's play the look ahead game and say next week. I tell you right now, 10 carries, and he does get 4 receptions. But the 10 carries issue. Let's say that happens this week. Will we not be a full blown infinity duck? Like this is panic time?
Yeah. That would be White. Again, you signed up for 20 plus opportunities. The backfield and getting north of 15 carries. Man, you're seeing across the league like these two-headed monsters.
And we knew that. We just thought that Braylon Allen, especially because Braylon Allen, despite whether you were on team Braylon Allen or not, which I obviously was, and I know you liked him a lot too, is still through the preseason, all the talk was, if something happens to Breece Hall, is it even Allen? Or is it going to be Isaiah Davis? Or Abanaconda was mixed in at the time. Like, there was all these options, and they're like, hey, who might it be? So anyway, all right, well, let's talk about his teammate. His teammate? All right. I actually gave his teammate 4 ducks, his teammate being Garrett Wilson. But I said this with a little bit of context, saying, if you were with me, it's only like 2. Like, Garrett Wilson, you know how I felt. Or you want to give me credit for it. I hate taking credit for somebody who's not doing well. But I had him as a top-end wide receiver 2, fringe wide receiver 1. And I ranked him there. You know this. My projections were actually lower than that. And I ranked him there on the potential, on the upside, saying we did the whole thing about like how big the second and third tier. Actually, that was third and fourth tiers, because that top tier being Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb, which that's kind of out the window right now. But anyway, the point being, there was a big-ish tier, including Garrett Wilson, and then there was a ginormous tier right after them. But the biggest tier, I was like, you know what? If I'm ranking all of them, I'm going to shoot for pure ceiling. I would push Garrett Wilson closer to the top than the bottom of that tier, but the projections actually had him at the bottom end of the tier. So I'm saying all that to say, it's only like 2 ducks if you kind of saw this coming, where you know what I'm going with. If anybody was listening to the entire offseason, is that I was concerned about the touchdowns for Garrett Wilson. I was like, hey, he could be Chris Olave. He could be old DJ Moore, 11, 12, 1,300 yards, but 4 touchdowns. And so far, this is what we're seeing, but the yards even aren't there as much because Aaron Rodgers is struggling. So 5 red zone targets for Garrett Wilson and 1 end zone target. Allen Lazard has the exact same number, despite being out there almost half the time on routes. And then on top of it, Aaron Rodgers is, not surprisingly, kind of junk at this point. He's over 40. He's coming off forget coming off the injury. Like, doesn't look good. So are you on the 2 side or you're on the 4 side? Because I'm not saying like, oh, you weren't as much as me on this one, but like, as a Garrett Wilson's not even top 20 right now.
No, I was on the side of him being a low end wide receiver 1, and
his ADP was wide receiver 8.
Yeah, he was going way too early. Like, he was going, and we can sit here all day and say the wide receivers, like, even again, Mike Evans comes to mind. We were just like, why is Mike Evans like wide receiver 17 and Garrett Wilson's wide receiver 8? I don't know. Evans had a couple dead weeks, but he bounced back last week. Yeah, I do respect Denver and their secondary, but I look before that and I see like 5 for 33 and 4 for 57 and 6 for 60 and getting 11 and 9 targets. You know what it looks like? It looks like last year's mess with that quarterback play and him getting some targets, but not converting for them. And I look ahead at some of the schedules, like this week, Minnesota. Rodgers has had some bad games against his old divisional rival, Minnesota Vikings, in Minnesota and leading the league in sacks. I don't expect it to be much better this week. And then I look at Buffalo and Pittsburgh, and then he's got to deal with Gonzalez again in New England. So, yes, he can handle top corners, I think. But Rodgers is spreading this thing around. He's not the go-to guy.
Sneak preview ahead of the ranking show tomorrow, but just going to throw this out there. So something that we saw success with last week was Matthew Stafford peppering a certain spot of the Bears defense. The middle intermediate, he just lit up all day long. I'm still worried about the Bears defense as a whole, as matchup wise, but I'm setting this up to say early look. We haven't done them yet, but rankings in your gut right now. Deontay Johnson in Chicago or Garrett Wilson in Minnesota. I would rank Deontay Johnson higher.
Yeah, me too. And I did last week.
That's crazy.
And I know the matchup was better last week. It's easy to say, okay, Surtain. And then you go Deontay against Cincy. But yeah, no, it is crazy. And, part of it is the quarterback play and the lack of weapons around Andy Dalton. Like, it does seem like it's just going to be Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette. But yeah, man, I'm concerned. I think he deserves 4. Shout out to Ryan McDowell. I think he tweeted Garrett Wilson has 1 wide receiver 1 week in the last 21 games. So again, to your point, we wanted
to throw it out for the quarterback play last year, but still, it hasn't.
But through 4 weeks, we've yet to see a wide receiver 1 week, right? No. I don't think the 11.8 was good enough for him to be there. So yeah, it's got. And I don't think Rodgers just turns this thing around, right? He's older now. Maybe he's going to have some good games and some bad games, but he's not just going to be he's, I don't know. Maybe he'll shake off a little bit of the rust in the decision-making and he'll learn a rapport with some of these other guys.
Shake off some of the rust. He's like one of those bikes that's been sitting on the side of the road that has the holes through the rust. There's nothing you can do about it at this point. You're going to step on it and the frame's going to break.
I was going to say, at this point, he is who he is, right? He's an aging quarterback coming off an Achilles injury.
Wait. Are you saying he is who we thought he was?
Maybe who you and I thought he was.
Okay,
and shout out to Joe Pisapia, who jumped on. I listened to him on Sirius XM a couple weeks ago. It was Rodgers' first game, and we were trying to figure out where to rank him. And he's like, "What are we doing here? We're not considering starting Rodgers in fantasy."
I've had him 20 to 22 the entire season. I've had Daniel Jones in front of him twice. So it just as misery continues, and then we're gonna get some good stuff, but. Last one, and I'm going to leave this simple because I know what the worry level is. It is Infinity Duck. I'm not even letting you answer this one. But the question I'm going to ask you, because I gave him the Infinity Duck, you can't take it away, Meaney. I don't care what you say. Because I know you're going to agree with me. Are you dropping Mark Andrews? That was the last chance, wasn't it? He just had his final chance.
Yeah. I just don't know how it gets better. I did early rankings last night. And I had likely ahead of him, but still didn't have him as a top 12 tight end. They're running the football. Those guys are both on the field blocking. Andrews had 1 target. I look at the game against Dallas and likely was on the field. He dropped it. Likely was on the field more than him. I think likely at this point is maybe a little bit more agile too. And he's also a good blocker. So and we know what the Ravens want to do. I was looking ahead at their schedule and trying to figure out when this could get better and when they play a team that can push the pace. Like, that's it. Like,
no. I'm just laughing because that's what it's come to. You're like,
right.
When will this happen? No, he just had his opportunity for this to happen. That's the problem.
Yeah, he just played a team where you felt like the Cowboys and the Bills would push the pace against the Ravens, and they didn't. Cowboys came back late, garbage time stuff. Buffalo was never in that game. Now they faced the Bengals. They got Washington
Bengals
coming
offense
up.
is terrible.
The Bengals offense, and their run defense is brutal, so they're just going to continue to run. Maybe the Commanders are unbelievable and they can't be stopped, and maybe that's a game where
I will say
it's
Cincinnati, Washington, Tampa Bay is a pretty nice 3-game stretch. That's for defenses to face. But here's the problem. Yeah, you gotta drop them if you need help. But who are you dropping for? Like, let me throw this out there. Would you drop him from Cade Otton for 2 games in a row? And somebody asked about Cade Otton, but like, I know you like him, but those were 2 matchups that pointed to Cade Otton doing damage because of the matchups. The 2 games prior to that, Cade Otton basically did nothing. So I'm looking at the matchup for the Bucs this week on Thursday Night Football against the Falcons. I'm like, this isn't something that they really need Cade Otton for. But I mean, you would.
I think I would.
And I'm saying that's the conversation. So like, because this is where I go with it is for everybody that's like, oh, DeAndre Swift got dropped. What would you do? And I was like, I'd let somebody else have that problem because you're going to put him in your lineup and let's say he does well. Okay, cool. Yeah, like there's opportunity. Like, let's just say I'm wrong about DeAndre Swift being done. Let's just say he's good this week and you have him going forward as an RB2. Okay, cool. Fine. There's still the chance that he has the bad game. It's 50-50. Would you, or do you think I'm crazy? Do you think it should be higher that he has a good game? I think it's like 50-50.
No, I think it's 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
so my issue,
it could be 25.
And if you want to deal with this for everybody out there, if you want to deal with this, go right ahead. Like, I understand some people are desperate at running back, but my issue is this. If he has a bad game, now you can't start him next week. So you already missed the good game. You got saddled with another bad game this week, and then you're in a conundrum again in week 6. So I say let him be somebody else's problem if you don't need running back help. Like, I would rather, we're going to get to wide receivers. If Swift and Wicks are out there, I'm going Dontayvion Wicks 10 times out of 10, unless I'm desperate and I need running back. Like, I understand it. And that's the same thing with Andrews. I would like to hold him on my bench, but I don't want him to be my only tight end at this point because, and I hate carrying 2 tight ends. You know me. Get the hell. I'd rather stash a running back and a wide receiver for what we're seeing happen right now. Injuries start happening. But like if you play Andrews this week, you get saddled with another 0. You're gonna be like, damn, I shouldn't have had him. But if he's on your bench, you're like, oh, I should have played him. You put him in the lineup, goes up against Washington, lays another egg, and it's just like you're chasing your tail the entire year.
I know.
So it's just I hate those kind of situations because you get trapped. You basically there's your trap. You get trapped. So let's talk good then. Let's talk waivers. Well, maybe not good because the very first running back we're going to talk. Well, no, the first running back is good. Ish, maybe. Running backs hurting this week. It depends on where you want to go with running backs. So number 1 is Kareem Hunt, but I put Kareem Hunt with like an asterisk because I'd go after Kareem Hunt if he's still out there. Like, he was lower in the running back rankings last week because we still hadn't seen him yet. But there's a couple factors at play here, in my opinion. Let's see if you agree on this one. So you have Carson Steele, who fumbled and then basically was eliminated from the game. Pull the old Belichick. You do have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is now eligible to return to practice. We have to see what this means because this was not an injury for everybody out there. I keep saying this to remind everybody, but this was not injury. This was mental. It was saying like he had like PTSD from the injury and his mind wasn't in the right spot. If that's fixed, Edwards-Helaire has been Edwards-Helaire was a first round. I mean, granted, it shouldn't have been, but you remember he was a first round running back when Darrell Williams sat out the year during COVID and everything like that, and everybody went bananas. He wasn't a first rounder, but he was still a first top 4 or 5 rounder at that point in that season. So I'm just saying that's another person in the mix. And we don't know that this definitively means Steele is done. But to circle all this right back to the beginning, Meaney, I think it's like it's Kareem Hunt on the Chiefs. You still have to take this chance, do you not?
Yeah. And I think that Steele could be done. I think that there's a world
Do they
where
want him to be done.
Yeah,
it's just like, please let us find somebody else.
I know, like it's a nice story, but dude's a fullback. He doesn't have a lot of experience. It's on a Super Bowl squad, right? And I think it was pretty telling that Reed didn't go back to him like right away. Like that to me, because he is he's a pretty forgiving dude. He is given second, third, fourth chances on the football field for players off the football field. Going back to his Philly days, this is kind of what he does. And it's a team that was undefeated. That happened early in that football game. So he could have easily brushed that off and said, all right, it's okay, get back out there. But he just, like you said, it was it. It was Bill Belichick, you're done. And that was maybe part of the reason why they brought in Kareem Hunt, because they didn't really feel like Steele could be, the answer. He still may get some touches, some short yardage stuff, but Hunt immediately got most of the work through the air and on the ground, besides the goal line touch. I would say it's him and Pirine. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have to fight for touches and opportunities. And those may come if Hunt does struggle. But I think he's got enough to, in this offense, I'm not going crazy, to be like a low end RB2.
So I'm glad I completely agree. You said low end RB2, which means you have to go after him because that's startable every single week on most teams. Yeah. I mean, unless you just ran into a bunch and you just happen to be very fortunate and not had any injuries or issues so far, no split backfields or whatever.
Must be nice.
And low end RB2 is starting every single week. And the comparison I was going to make, you said Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably fighting for touches, but even if so, go back to Clyde Edwards-Helaire being the lead. Two other running backs are getting touches in that world, and Jerick McKinnon had value as an RB3, hopefully for a touchdown, which maybe he takes that role. And all of a sudden, Pirine's kind of that third. But it wouldn't be surprising that we've seen this before with Reed, with all three of them and all having like different roles, where Kareem Hunt settles into a 12 to 16 touch per week. Again, back in RB2, you're on the Chiefs. So number 2 is Trey Sermon, because Jonathan Taylor, so it's funny, somebody in the comments was like, where are you getting the news Jonathan Taylor's out for weeks? Well, the fact that high ankle sprain, and they had to clarify they're not putting him on the IR. So that's at least like a week or two. If he plays this week, I'm fine. I'm wrong on this one, but I'm thinking read the writing on the wall? I was about to say the paint on the wall. It's the writing on the wall. Read the writing on the wall. Wall? I can't talk. So Sermon's 2, but he's only here because I said he would actually rank number 1 if we were just ranking all running backs on waivers in pure volume. It's just pure volume is going to save Trey Sermon. But I think he's in the Cam Akers conversation. Isn't that? Yeah. Okay, so it needs a touchdown to save his day. To go back, his best season, I put this in quotes, was 2023, just last year for Sermon. Forced 0.11 missed tackles per attempt, which, of course, nobody's forcing over 1 tackle per attempt. That'd be insane. So, but that number, to give you an idea, was 80th. Jeff Wilson, Darrington Evans, and Pierre Strong ahead of him. That's how far down the list he was.
Gross.
So, if, let's say, you lost Jonathan Taylor, let's say your second running back options are Cam Akers with maybe Joe Mixon or Dameon Pierce coming back, and Alexander Madison, a Justice Hill. Do you go aggressive after Trey Sermon, knowing it might only be 2 games, and it is Trey Sermon?
You may have to with those options. It depends.
It's so hard.
Oh man, you just gave me the worst options ever. But yeah, I mean, it's good to bring those up, right? Because you could be in a tough spot. So I would say if I was 3-1, 4-0, I probably wouldn't be super aggressive, and I just get through these next couple weeks on.
So you would still do what I would do and go for Bucky Irving or Braylon Allen over.
Yeah, shooting bigger, higher ceiling, long-term game, right? Because those guys may turn into something more, and Sermon won't. And I think that. And I don't think your league mates will be really rushing to get Sermon if they weren't a Taylor owner. Again, context, they're probably what am I doing being super aggressive for 1 or 2 weeks? And the Taylor owner probably has to be a little bit more aggressive. But yeah, I think if I was 1-3, if I was, in the bottom of the standings and really needed a win this week, I would consider being, getting up to the 15% range of my fab, but I wouldn't be comfortable going north of
if
20,
you're on the
just
flip
knowing
side,
it could be a week or 2.
Single digits?
Yeah. And again, if I just 3-1, 4-0, and I had those other options, I may just roll those other options. I may spend $7-8 on Sermon. And if I didn't get him, I didn't get him. And I just hope hey, I'll get by this week. Maybe next week he does play, because I did see that IR thing and I thought to myself, okay, it's not super serious, but it's serious enough to consider it. So it's probably
they had to clarify it.
Yeah.
All right, so further down the list, again, Irving is at 3. Braylon Allen's at 4. They continue to be here, getting into more work days. Great stashes. Cam Akers is 5. Still, again, if no Joe Mixon or Dameon Pierce, but it has to be both of them, as we've seen. I put Edwards-Helaire at 6, just again, because
why not?
just take the chance. And then because behind him is, we know who Rico Dowdle is. We know who Alexander Madison is. Justice Hill, if you need that. Algier, I'm going to skip one and come back. Emmanuel Wilson, Johnson, Gibson, Chandler, Tracy. Like, we know who these guys are. So the one I skipped to come back to is, it seems some people are more concerned than I was. And I'm the one just had all 8 games on, obviously. So I was tweeting, what the hell is going on? Watching Travis Etienne with no helmet standing on the sideline, because it was no helmet and he's kind of walking around. But the interesting thing was he was standing closer to the bench. He wasn't really standing close to Doug Peterson. And it's like one of those ones where it's like, okay, is he not going back in? And what the hell is happening? And then all of a sudden in the second quarter, or close to the second quarter, it's like, oh, by the way, he hurt his shoulder on that blocking play. And it's like, what? Like what? But here's the thing is why I'm not that concerned is because, Bigsby had a good game, but honestly, probably you could argue is Bigsby's best game. But even so, he still out-touched him 11-7, even missing a good chunk of the game. So would you rank Bigsby higher, or are you with me? Or you're not that concerned because even with all that going on, Etienne still out-touched him.
Yeah, he still out-touched him. I would probably put him ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because I just think there's maybe a clearer path for him to have some touches.
And I just had it was more like the fact that, like, what if Edwards-Helaire is the guy and Kareem Hunt? That was okay. That was fun for one game.
Right. Etienne, he's still getting a lot of the touches. Like, to your point, he's still getting, he hasn't, I don't think, really broken out yet to have that, that high ceiling game. Like, he hasn't had any RB1 performances.
Would you give him any ducks?
I would give him one. I would give him one, or maybe think about 2. Buy low, I would buy low if I was hurting for a running back. Like, I'm trying to, like, there's somebody in my league last night, or not in my league, in our Discord, was trying to, like, buy low. He had a bunch of wide receivers, and he couldn't really play Terry Olave and, Marvin Harrison. I didn't want him to trade Mar, but you were trying to figure out some buy low candidates. It's like, hey, Walker had the 3 touchdown game, my goodness. But, like, throw out Mixon, even though with the injury, and Etienne was on my mind as, like, guys that you could maybe get for a wide receiver. I felt uncomfortable trading Mar for any one of those guys, but sometimes you just, you can't be taking zeros at the running back position.
Right.
But one thing I will say why I would give a duck or two is that Peterson's got to be on the hot seat. Yeah, like, the Jags are a mess, and this is dating back to the last 2 months of last season. This is 3 months of football where they haven't rattled off a win. And I don't know if Peterson is stressing to the point where, like, yo, Etienne, if you're not going to break a run or two, I have to give more touches to Bigsby, who actually has had, like, a 73-yard game and a 90-yard game on limited touches. So there is a chance maybe Jake head into this week where it's like maybe a couple more carries for Bigsby, but I still believe that Etienne is, like, should handle 70% of the touches and all the work through the air. But there is a chance, like, that Bigsby can cut in a little bit more if Etienne doesn't bring it, and this Jags team doesn't bring it.
No, they don't. I just realized
maybe they fired Doug Peterson, and it's like, then it's just a complete mess. Like, who knows then?
So I was gonna say they only have 7 home games because they're over in London. And they're the home team, in quotes. But they're over in London. In case anybody noticed it, they're over in London 2 weeks in a row. I was about to say, do they even come home during that? Or do you just stay
Doug
over
Peterson
there?
may not. And that
was the joke I was going to make.
They win games.
They come home, but then he doesn't.
It's like didn't they leave Urban Meyer?
The plane left. Doug's like, wait, I'm still over here. London, baby.
London, baby.
Yeah. I will say, Colts on tap, but then they get the Bears right after that. And the Patriots, and then they get the Packers. So there are some, but unfortunately saddled in between 2 potential decent running matchups. They have 2 unfortunate ones mixed in between. All right, then let's move over to wide receiver. Real quick, I pass on Samaje Perine, especially with Edwards-Helaire possibly getting in the mix. And even if so, they just, and then Jerry McNichols that was only because Austin Eckler wasn't out there, which unfortunately we didn't even get that for Eckler. I don't know how Ezekiel Elliott is still over 50% rostered. Get him
What's the
the hell
deal
off
there?
your team. What are you doing?
Even Cowboys fans can't be impressed with what they've seen from Zeke to hold him.
And then Jalen Warren, only because got reports that Jalen Warren was IR thoughtable. Like, I don't even know how to put that. I'm just making a word there. They considered it. Like, that's how far they're like off of him not coming back soon. So,
done.
yeah. So, all right. Wide receivers. I referenced it earlier, and this is why I've done Dontayvion Wicks number 1. If everybody listens to Sirius XM, basically going to quote myself from yesterday, so Meaney knows what I'm about to say. If I knew there was no Christian Watson to start the 2024 season, like the entire season, like Christian Watson is not a Packer, like one way or another, I would have gone Reed, Wicks, Dobbs in order. And I am a Dobbs fan, mostly because of opportunities, which I thought would turn the corner with Jordan Love because he's been out there the most. That was with Watson being out there as the outside wide receiver, XY, whatever. But it really came down to, I thought that being a good fit with Jaden Reed and Watson, and that Dobbs is better than Watson. Reed is better than Watson. Wicks is also better than Watson. Wicks is a better talent than Watson. We've seen it before. We're seeing it again. Watson is out, but because of that, Wicks is better. Wicks is honestly on a different level of his style, but same tier talent-wise of what Jaden Reed is doing, Wicks can do too. So now, Wicks is not only my top streaming option, I'd slam him right into my lineups this week, probably as a wide receiver 3, and only as a wide receiver 3, just to see what the full snap count is. My only, and this is a very slim hesitancy, is we just saw this with the Rams, is that Whittington in the game cup left, got all the work. The very next week, he was 4th, and then this past week, now he was back to number 2 with Atwell. Does Wicks still get that full route compliment because Watson left in game, and now Wicks with a full week maybe drops down to 3rd? I don't think so. I'm just saying that's the only reason I wouldn't even have him as a wide receiver 2. There is wide receiver 2 top 20 upside with him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to add other than that. Like, I have a lot of him and a lot of Dubs. I wish I had a little bit more Reed. I thought Reed was going slightly early. Romeo and Watson were pretty much neck and neck in terms of my rankings. I didn't believe in Watson at all. And I really like Wicks like you. I think he's a terrific route runner. I think there's so many things that he can do on the football field, and he's a weapon. And what we said at the start of the season, it's just, this is really crowded and something needs to happen for him to take off. And that's happening here. I love the matchup this week. I have Reed as a top 10 wide receiver early on, penciled in as my rankings. And I have Wicks and Romeo as like flex plays, low end wide receiver 3s. I think I don't want to give up on Romeo. I think he's still, like, he had 8 targets and he played more snaps, but Wicks is really close to that range as well. I think that Wicks probably has more to offer, like yards after the catch. I think he's a better route runner. I think he's got better hands, and Romeo is kind of like, you really want that touchdown. I think there's maybe more of a touchdown ceiling with him, despite Wicks scoring twice last week. But yeah, I think all of these guys are, I'm with you. Like, definitely waiver wire pickup. You know, such a good spot this week. I wish I had a little bit more of, I wish I hung on, I guess, because I did take some Wicks at the end of my drafts, but with the Love injury, just didn't feel like it was worth holding on to. And
no, because we read the room properly. This is sometimes where like process and results don't mesh. Is we read the room. We sat here and exactly what we thought happened. Dobbs was the one out there 90% of the times. 90% of the time. Reed was the slot 3rd option. They do run a decent amount of 3 wide, but on the field, fewer snaps all 3 weeks than Watson and Dobbs, especially Dobbs. And we were off on Watson. It's just we didn't want to take Reed as top 25 because being the 3rd limits the potential of being on the field. Now, of course, they're like, when he's on the field, he's just going to get the ball. So, of course, like, you could argue that like that's the miss there. But then Wicks being the clear 4th, barely on the field until the Watson injury. So we read it properly. We read it. It's just Reed being out there is what they're doing. They're basically I don't want to, I hate to use this, but he is Deebo Samuel of what people wanted to be for Deebo Samuel. Right. Like, he's like more rushing than anybody right now. So
yeah, I think he'll be consistent, and I think there'll be some inconsistencies with Wicks and Dobbs, but still good enough and worthy enough to play because of the offense and Love.
I pulled this up. 91 rushing yards through 4 games, which isn't a lot, but it's a lot for a wide receiver. Do you know who the next closest is? Xavier Worthy at 39. And a lot of that came on that first play that he had.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I bet his rushing prop last week, and he didn't get an attempt. But the first 3 games he had, at least
Jaden Reed
5,
is new Debo. That's the Debo everybody was hoping for. All right,
Yeah.
so then let me put up who's behind Wicks and see if you still agree, because so far you did agree, but I didn't tell you who's behind him because there are some names that should still be on rosters. Number 2 is Lad McConkey. You would still take Wicks over McConkey? Or would you take McConkey?
Yeah, I would take Lad. I think it's a little clearer in terms of targets and opportunities. And you can see when top corners are on Quentin Johnston, it may just be the Lad show. So, yeah, I would take him slightly.
The interesting thing was McConkey was one of the higher drop ones after week 3. And I kept telling people, why? Like, stop. Patience. It's like it was one
People
quiet
panic
game.
over a couple of weeks, man. They don't do anything for 1 week, and it's just like drop city. Like everyone may pick up Wicks this week, and if he doesn't, smash in a great spot, they may be willing to cut him. And it's just like try to show a little bit of patience. It's only week 5.
It is. But a lot of people might be 1-3 or 0-4 and panicking, and I understand it. So number 3 was Josh Downs. You know my feelings about Josh Downs. I even put that in there and said I don't care who the quarterback is. Obviously, it's better passing numbers if it's Joe Flacco, but I'm still okay with it because I think, and you're nodding your head if anybody's watching later on YouTube, which you still can because you still see our backdrops and T-shirts and all that type of stuff. We still put the video up later for you guys that like to watch us talk instead of just listening to our awful voices. Well, at least my voice. I think my voice is awful. But anyway, Josh Downs, I actually think if it's Anthony Richardson, is the number 1 Colts wide receiver. Like better than Pittman. And that's why I'm okay with Dobbs, not knowing who the quarterback is, because I think Downs is the 2 with Flacco, but I think the numbers are going to be very similar with either quarterback because he's the 1 if it's Richardson, he's the 2 if he's Flacco, but the numbers even, you get on where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I do. And I think he's just better suited for Richardson's skill sets as opposed to Pittman's with
But
Richardson.
still Wicks, right?
Yeah.
Wicks over Darnell Mooney, even though what do we have left to say about Darnell Mooney at this point?
What do we have left to say? He seems
All
to...
I did was put the smirking emoji in the waiver. I do this every single year. About the time I get to week 3 or 4, I just start putting the smirk emoji for and it's just kind of like, I don't know what, that's the best emoji I could find. It's like, I wish there was an emoji that says, I don't know what I can say. Like, I don't know what I can do to convince you to pick this person up, but obviously you don't want him.
He's got the trust of Kirk Cousins. Cousins has been taking shots deep down the field to him as well. Missed on a couple. Could have really had a bigger day last week. And I don't believe in Zacchaeus or Ray. Those guys are going to have moments depending on matchups. But I was thinking that this was 1A, 1B Pitts, but it's not. It's Mooney's has a legitimate shot of being the number 2 option in this passing game consistently, anyways, all year long. So. I'm with you on that.
Then Xavier Legette is next. Super excited for this. I love some Xavier Legette, but I would still take Mooney over him given the teams. We are going to see Bryce Young at some point. He's going to come back. They have to find out. It might not be for 5 or 6 weeks, but it's going to happen. So 6. I can't. Tyler Lockett, by the way. Last week's comment said, how did he fall under 60? And somebody was like, because he's trash. I'm like, how does that feel after watching Monday Night Football? Oh, is he? Is he trash?
He's not trash.
Tyler Lockett's there. Quentin Johnston's next, only because Johnston's got another rough matchup, and that offensive line's not giving Justin Herbert enough time to find Johnston back. And that could change, but I would take McConkey over him because of that. Dobbs is down now behind him because the Wicks thing. And Dobbs would be higher up. Tutu Atwell, Wan'Dale Robinson. Now it's getting gross. Trey Tucker. Those are... Tutu Atwell, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Trey Tucker, that's the 3-person Spider-Man thing, just pointing all at each other to kind of give you an idea. I put Whittington behind Tutu, behind Tucker, behind Wan'Dale, in front of Lazard, Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk, and down from there. Do you think that's a fair spot, or would you go higher or lower? Because you know how I feel. If anybody's been listening to this show, they know how I feel about Whittington. And I would love for Whittington to be the number 1 or number 2. And he was last week, but I can't also ignore what he wasn't 2 weeks before that, which was the game after he stepped in for I just don't know if McVay is going to be playing this rotational matchups with the wide receivers. And yeah, maybe that was really fun and Whittington has the higher ceiling, but maybe that was just a matchup thing with the Rams. That's the only like hesitancy I have. Like if you told me Whittington was clearly the 2, I'd put him over Johnston.
Yeah, I know. It's tough to put him over Johnston. And you expect Cooper to come back. Like Kupp's going to come back at some
Sound
point.
like the 2 weeks, but it could be worse. Like
yeah.
If you missed it, Jake Glazer on Sunday morning said 2 more weeks for Kupp at least. Which
Yeah.
and then
it's
4
more
for Nakua.
Yeah, Nakua is in a rougher spot than him. But it's it's more of a short-term thing where Quentin Johnson, like long-term appeal there. And you hope that he continues to grow where like Kupp comes back and that kind of cuts in. So I think it could be another Whittington week if I'm thinking like Jair Alexander, is focusing in on Johnson or maybe Palmer. So no, I don't know, man. I'm not really. I guess Demarcus Robinson. He would be focusing on Demarcus Robinson. I would assume that would be the matchup for
We're gonna get to
Jair
him.
in
He's
that
not. We're not
Rams
getting
and
to him
Packers
yet.
game. And I don't even. I don't trust him. I think if you're stashing somebody in LA, it would be Whittington. I wanted to find a way to put Leggett up there a little bit higher than maybe Mooney, but we probably will see Bryce Young, which would just put a damper on all of it. It would, that wouldn't be great. But I think for the next few weeks, me personally, I would think I would have a little bit more trust. I'm with you on Leggett, man. And Dalton's really only going to throw the football to 2 guys. It's going to be those 2 guys.
The weird thing is that while Mingo was the primary slot receiver, he actually ran the most routes by 1.
Yeah, he's Fitbit.
Which is I know, but that's so weird. Like if you're going to treat him as the slot, why does he get to run another? Like, why is he out there still in one wide receiver? Like,
not a factor.
I didn't understand that. Like, well, maybe it's no, because then I was going to say, I was just about to, for real quick, what that was that was a really quick processing. I
was just doing the same thing, mixing up wide receivers and corners.
Because I was like, well, Mingo blocks, and then I was like, wait, no, that wouldn't mean he didn't run the route. And that he did run the route. So, like, you get what I'm saying? That's where my brain real quickly, like, rapid fired through that. All right, so as we get out of here.
I'm a little bit sour on Quentin Johnson, but we did talk about the tough matchups moving forward that you'd have to
We
be
knew that
patient
was
with
coming.
him. Yeah, the schedule of the corners coming for sure. And then Herbert's health is in question.
Well,
But
and also the
definitely,
offensive line health.
big time. Yeah, and I'm concerned about JK as well. And if
they're on a
they
bye.
can't move the ball, the offensive line needs to get healthier. But yeah, the bye is going to come at the right time for them.
So the bye comes at the right time to come right out and face Denver in Denver. But if you can get through that, if you can just be patient, as we're saying today, like have patience, then you get Arizona and the schedule really starts to soften back up.
It does.
So if they can get healthy on the offensive line, you probably don't want to. I mean, you can't start them this week on a bye, but if you can hold off on your bench, and so let's toss this out there. You said you were kind of sour. Would you drop Johnston? Again, slimmer leagues, but just to kind of give people some context here, would you drop Johnston for Dobbs, Atwell, Trey Tucker, Whittington, knowing that like he has the bye? You basically can't use him for 2 weeks.
I would drop him for Dobbs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm in a situation where I have Leggett. I picked up Leggett. I've been dealing with some injuries at wide receiver, AJ and whatnot. So I picked up Quentin Johnson a couple weeks ago, and then I picked up Leggett last week, and I didn't play him this week. I didn't play Quentin either, but I just didn't play him. And now it's like I got to drop somebody, and I think I'm going to drop Quentin. And again, I'd like to be patient, but I want to live in the moment right now, and I think Leggett is a better play for the next couple weeks.
Okay. So as I mark this, Keelan Coleman, Jalen Polk, I mean, not Judy because he's not really. Mike Williams is way down. You know what? I'll throw Mike Williams. Mike Williams still behind Allen Lazard in routes. This might not be happening. I could be completely wrong on this. I just really thought Mike Williams, we've seen it, top 20 talent when healthy. And at this point, it seems like he's pretty much 100%, but still behind Lazard. So if you had to stash only one of Coleman, Polk, and Mike Williams, would you go Coleman as well?
Yeah, I would. Just
okay.
Hoping touchdown, better quarterback play. I don't think we'll see Polk be a thing until May gets in there, and that may not be till like week 14.
I mean, he was the number 1, but also Kendrick Bourne could return. So you have that issue. So I said we were going to get to talk about Demarcus Robinson. I am in Dumpsville, all the way down in Dumpsville, because he's completely not even a factor. And if Whittington is going to be one, And Demarcus Robinson, we were worried was just basically like sacrificial lamb to the outside best corner. And it's not even that. It's just with that offensive line and the new offense being get it out quick, get it out quick, get it out quick, which has been an aspect of the Rams in the past, but now even more so. They're really doing things to minimize the effect of losing so many offensive linemen. Here's the interesting why I wanted to ask you this. So somebody in the comments said, and I get the point, they're like, Demarcus Robinson is very familiar with the Andy Reid system. So, are you galaxy braining yourself right now? And in the fact of like, before Mike Williams, there's this cluster. I have Juju Smith-Schuster, comma, Justin Watson, comma, Sky Moore, as in like it's the Chiefs. Like you're only like, hey, it's the Chiefs. The offense should still be like, it's not the Patrick Mahomes we know from 3 years ago. Patrick Mahomes isn't even a QB1, but it's the Chiefs. And like, if one of those three becomes the number 2, you have at least wide receiver 3. Like Juju Smith-Schuster was not exciting, but he was like wide receiver 3/4 because with the 900 yards, he still gets the touchdowns because it's the Chiefs. If it's him again, Smith-Schuster, but like there's value. Justin Watson, bigger play opportunity, Sky Moore, more of what Rashee Rice was doing. But there's also been Amari Cooper floated rumors, Demarcus Robinson with the familiar with the offense. I threw out Darius Slayton last night during the games of like the Giants are trying to offload him because he's not part of their future plans. And that would actually cost them nothing. They could probably get him for like a 7th. But are you doing it? Like, and I say galaxy braining the fact of like, it is kind of tongue in cheek, but are you doing this of a, like, hey, I have a free spot. I'm just going to take a chance. It's one of them. And if so, would it be one of the Chiefs guys? Would it be Robinson? Would it be Slayton? Obviously, you'd have to trade for Cooper, but like, are you trying to play this game of like the Chiefs might do blank?
I'm with you on Robinson, right? We've seen this so many times where a wide receiver, it's like you just assume, the top 2 guys are gone and he's going to get all the volume and he's going to get all the targets, but he's also going to get the top corner. And he can't handle that. He's a 3 on a team where all the other attention is on the other 2 guys. So I'm with you on Robinson. I would take a shot on Juju. He'd probably be the one out of the 3 Kansas City Chiefs guys that you mentioned. But I'm in the camp and fully believe that this team is going to make a move. Whether it's going to be like an earth-shattering Cooper, Devontae Adams, like maybe not. But they're going to make a move. We've seen them make moves before. Kadarius Toney, guys have gone down. Bring back Hardman. They've made moves before because their window is like they're winning all the time. So like they don't care about picks and they can bring somebody in. They're already down Isaiah Pacheco and Rashee Rice. Like they're 2 main parts of their offense. So, again, Hunt, like they're going to do something. I have this feeling it's going to be Cooper, but if I had an extra bench spot, I would take a shot on Juju and maybe him be the guy because he has at least shown me in spurts a lot more than Watson or Scott Moore has, right? So maybe get him in the slot. The ceiling's probably not high. Right. Maybe you can get like a 4 for 44 type game or something like that. But I maybe
are we on the wrong Browns wide receiver? How do you find the practice? Like I've tried to do this before, and there's not like a one site for it. Browns practice squad. Isn't Kadarius Toney on the practice squad of the Browns?
He is.
Okay.
You trade him back?
get him back? Well, no, because he's on the practice squad. They wouldn't have to trade for him.
Oh, right. Yeah. He's on one of my.
Yeah, he's on the practice squad.
In like the deepest dynasty.
He doesn't even have a picture on their site. It just says Cleveland Browns. That's this picture. His picture is Cleveland Browns. The whole logo.
Well, you saw that tweet I sent you yesterday, I think in the chat when we were doing the show. We didn't really bring it up, but Amari Cooper, like his contract was restructured. It's like easier to make a trade for him in Cleveland. I mean, what are you doing, right? Your season's, even though Chubb is practicing again, you can't. This team's not going to go anywhere.
Will it though? They have a defense.
Yeah, they don't have a quarterback.
I was waiting for it. So you already said you'd pass on Zacchaeus, Paris Campbell, same thing. They're on a bye. That was injuries. Trey Palmer, same thing. And all right, streaming tight ends. Let's give some people some hope for playing with this dumbass position still. These are the top. I'll just run through all of them. And there's one that I left out. So I'm going to ask you to slide them in. I did overlook the fact that like I don't know why, I had him in there previous weeks, and all of a sudden, just one of those things. It's Monday Night Football, 2 games, and doing this all at the same time. So I got to slide him in somewhere. So you tell me where I'm sliding it. Tell me where I'm putting K-Dot in. There you go. So
I thought it was going to be Tucker Kraft, but yeah, I could put K-Dot.
No, Tucker Kraft is 2. And I'm still hesitant on Tucker Kraft. I'm not going crazy for Tucker Kraft. They have 3 wide receivers. They had 4. It could be a Tucker Kraft week. And then this week, it could be 0 Tucker Kraft. And then next week, it could be again. But that's what the tight end position is now. It's like, just hope your guy. Oh, by the way, random ass tight end dudes scoring. Wait. I know he finished as a tight end 1 last night because he caught a touchdown. But I want to see how far he finished. Because it was like 1 catch for a touchdown. Where was it? He's Ogletree was. Not Ogletree. Who was the one that caught the touchdown last night?
It was the rookie for Seattle.
AJ Barner. That's what it was. AJ Barner was the one. Yeah. Who I actually kind of like. He finished 6th. 2 for 27. Tight end 6 for the week. Tight end effing 6. By the way, Blake Whiteheart. Guarantee nobody knew who the hell he was. 3 for 13 for a touchdown. 8. Austin Hooper, 2 for 13 for a touchdown. 10. Andrew Ogletree, 1 for 15 and a touchdown.
Those
12.
4 guys are 0% owned. So the 4 of the top 12, 13.
Well, you might as well throw in Josh Oliver at 13, 2 for 10 and a touchdown. He finished 13. So there you go. Actually, he tied for 12. He technically counts. He tied for 12.
This is what I told you about Hunter Henry. And I know we're always chasing tight ends, but like I saw enough a couple weeks ago on Thursday Night Football where it was Hooper on the field more than and Brissett.
Oh, okay.
It was Hooper on the field more than Hunter Henry. So like I've stopped with ranking, and it's so tough to rank tight ends. But like I would rather these other guys that
You know what my favorite thing about this is right now? Because when you pull up the tight end stats, they only show receiving because it's tight end. This is my favorite part about this. Tight end 1 for the week. 0 targets, 0 receptions, 0 yards, 0 touchdowns. Taysom Hill, 14.4, because it was all rushing. Who's now hurt, by the way. But if he's not hurt, clearly, is he the number 1 just because of this? Like, it's so funny. He's essentially 2 points or tight end number 1. Like, there's no in between with Taysom Hill. So
I ranked him top 10 guy this week, even though I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah, so Taysom Hill, Tucker Kraft, Zach Ertz, Noah Fant against the Giants, Gesicki, Henry, Conklin, Parkinson, Strange. Like, that's where we are now. Strange is only out there. He's essentially one of those 2 for 12s for a touchdown hope, which he was 2 weeks ago if Evan Ingram's out. So my question is, where do you slide in K. Dotton? Is it? I'll put it this way: is K. Dotton 2, 3, or 4? Because I know he's going to be somewhere in the mix with Kraft, Ertz, and Fant for you.
Yeah, he's like ahead of Fant, and in my rankings, I have him 1 spot ahead of Ertz. I think
Ertz, so he's a little bit of a slide in number 3. I'll let you do that. Look at this. Meaney's working for the Athletic again.
K-Dot, slide him in there. You know, I've always liked him. You're not wrong about the matchups. He torched the Eagles
liked him too
last year in the playoffs. Yeah, the offense does seem to run through 2 guys, but McMillan's hurt at the moment, so maybe. Just maybe. And part of it may have been with the tough corners like a couple weeks ago where Baker wasn't even really looking Mike Evans' way with Surtain on him. So it's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Again, it's the tight end position. I think what we really have to focus on after like the quote unquote big 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 tight ends. It's just like you're hoping to get touchdowns. It's like, okay, who's involved in the red zone packages? Who's getting red zone targets? Because that's what it is. You just said it. Like these guys are getting 2 for 14 and 1's a touchdown. So I know that they're really tough to predict, but it's a good offense. Baker's playing good. Maybe he could fall in the end zone. That's really where it comes down to for me.
This is so tight end, top 10 tight ends without a touchdown this year. There are
all of them.
No,
like
3.
Laporta, Kelsey doesn't have. They don't have one.
Well, they're not. So Laporta's not even a top 10 tight end right now.
I know he just had his first good game yesterday.
Kelsey just creeped in to be in 10th with that game, slightly in front of Zach Ertz. So there are 3 tight ends, and it's Goddard, Bowers. Yeah, Goddard, Bowers, and Ferguson. Ferguson's coming around. He's gonna.
Yes.
I'd buy low on Ferguson.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would probably rank him like 3 rest of the year, 3, maybe 4.
Yikes. Sucks.
Yeah, it's still like Kelsey. You know, with the Rice thing, you get Kelsey. You're just like, okay, like maybe this is better now. To force feed him. but it's pretty rough, man. And McBride, I'd say like Kelsey, McBride, Laporta, and Ferguson are guys that I and Bowers. Those are the five that after that, it's like even Goddard, after the bye, you're going to get Devontae and AJ. They're going to come back. And it's just
what's going to be real pretty for people? The ones that stashed Hawkinson, waiting for him to come back.
It's good that you brought him up because people are playing this tight end game. Maybe he's out there. I don't know what his ownership is. He's most likely stashed at this point, but it depends, right? Like people fall down, or he's 66% owned. People fall down, 1 and 3, or they have to drop an IR. No, it's not. And he's a guy that Darnold leads the NFL in touchdowns at the moment, and he's going to get Hawkinson back. So it's a good call to bring him up.
And there was reports that he might practice this week, but even if so, the big opportunity comes is don't bring him back this week. They have a bye next week, and then week 7. By the way, if anybody hasn't paid attention and you buy into that nonsense, you know what week 7 is, right?
Yeah,
revenge against his Lions.
The only revenge from the weekend really was Kingsbury. Good for him. Nobody will top that.
Oh, that's true. That's a really good point.
Nice. It was really nice.
Before we get out of here, real quick.
Felt great about that.
Real quick, because we're kind of over now, and people are probably already tuned out. So Fox can cut off at some point when we're done talking about this, whenever he feels like it. But real quick, does Kyler Murray deserve ducks? He has one top 10 performance. One. The other 3 were not top 10.
I would say maybe 1. We'll see what happens when like McBride's there. Get back to maybe McBride and Marv. But one thing I did notice before last week, and of course I was on it last week, was that he was running kind of like he used to. 5 for 57, 5 for 59,
until
5 for 45 until last week. 1 attempt, just 1, which was kind of surprising. But hey man, I watched that game and maybe Dan Quinn could actually get this defense, at least the front, playing well. The secondary is bad, but if they can get some pressure on the quarterback, that may be something we.
I don't remember if I said it on this show or Sirius XM, because I do the Washington Huddle locally. I've covered them for years. I do a fantasy segment, so whopping 2 minutes fantasy segment I do for them. But because of that, very tied into the Commanders, because something they will ask general NFL questions to me. And one thing I said about them before we even said the season is their defense is trash, but their front has talent. Their front has had talent. And if you watch that game too, as you mentioned, Dan Quinn kind of not completely spied Murray, but also they were down early, so there was a lot more passing going on where Murray, granted there's only 22 attempts, but I meant the actual game plans were 22 attempts of what they could possibly they didn't have the ball a hell of a lot. So anyway, I thought it was interesting, the fact that he's only got 1 top 10 performance. And
I know, and I ranked him as I think quarterback 2 maybe last week. I had him pretty high.
2 or 3.
I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting a lot more. Yeah, and especially from the run. But you're not wrong about guys like Payne, and they can get after the quarterback. And Dan Quinn, man, I look at Dallas and I'm saying they kind of missed Dan Quinn. Because defensively, they're back to 3 or 4 pre-Dan Quinn of being just an atrocious defense. And I know now they're missing some guys in Lawrence and Parsons, but Dan Quinn, if we already know that the offense in Washington looks pretty good, they'll regress a little bit. The matchups will get tougher. Do you think
it's weird that players are playing and doing podcasts, and when they're hurt, they're still doing the podcast?
Yeah,
like Parsons and what's his face in the NBA, and Austin Eckler did it last year. Why can't I think of his name?
And and Travis Kelce's doing it all the time.
Yeah,
you're not thinking about
the Warriors,
the jerk in the NBA. Oh, Draymond, yeah,
Draymond. He was doing
Draymond and Micah Parsons are very blunt and up. Micah Parsons, I haven't listened fully to his podcast, but I've seen clips on TikTok or Instagram, and he's pretty upfront with borderline calling out certain players on his team and coaching staff and decisions. I don't know if the front office listens to his podcast, but I think there'd be people in the coaching staff or the front office that would listen and be like, "Whoa, Micah, maybe you shouldn't go that deep." And I'm sure players respect it, or the audience respects it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because he took right after that. I think that loss a couple weeks ago when they got smacked by the Saints. He did a podcast, I think, that night. And he probably should have taken another day to gather some of his thoughts before he went and did the podcast. I enjoyed him calling out his teammates, but it's pretty interesting. That's what the world's come to, man. These players are doing pods. Kelsey's doing pods an hour after shows and 2 days before games, and it's what this world's all about now.
Well, let me tell you, Meaney, I got some things to say about The Athletic.